Hey, what's up? Welcome to Four Guys with Quarter Presents, a variant podcast special edition. Today on this episode, we currently have Zane on from inZane Comics. What's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. How about you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, man. We're really excited to have you on.
I'm
And
excited to hear.
we got our co-host, Maverick.
How's everybody doing out there?
Well,
S-
oh, I'm sorry, Maverick. Go ahead.
Nah, dude, go ahead. You're fine.
Okay. I wanted to ask you. I took a look at your comic book, Zane, and I just want to say it's phenomenal. Um,
Thank you.
for me, my preference in comics is a good story, a good plot, and I really like the cartoony style art. That's like my favorite thing. Like, throws me to Image, to like Teen Titans, a mix of that kind of cartoony, and I think your comic book hits all those points for me.
Mm-hmm. I'm exactly the same way. There's something that draws me towards that cartoony feel. I don't know if it's that I've seen a lot of the, DC style, and I'm just kind of like had too much of it, or I want to have a different taste. I don't know what it is, but I'm drawn to that cartoony style myself.
Let's do something real quick before we go straight into questions. Why don't you take a couple minutes to explain, your comic book, where your ideas came from. Yeah, this is our first interview. We're kind of excited. We've been wanting to have you on for a while, so we're excited to get our questions out. But why don't you take a couple minutes and tell us, about your comic, where these ideas came from, and tell the viewers, what they can look forward to as far as your comic and what may be coming in the future.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So this comic, The Elemental Balance, I created about 2 years ago. Typically, whenever I write a story, for me, one of the things that are very important that it has to be a story for entertainment. I don't make any stories with any kind of, like cause or whatnot. I know there's a lot of people who do that, and all the power to them. I just like making stories just purely for entertainment. So this idea came from, I was kind of flipping through articles, and one of the things I do is I search a lot of random stuff. I don't know why I do it, but I just look at a lot of random articles and stuff. And I came across this conspiracy about how someone's claiming that we're disregarding the four elements, because those four elements were ancient concept of what people thought that the world comprised of. And so they were saying we're disregarding it, whereas if we think about it, in modern science, we know that there's four states of matter. And so they say that if you look at it, so when you say earth sounds like solid, liquid sounds like water, gas sounds like wind, and plasma sounds like fire, they seem very similar. And so it was just something interesting. I mean, and from that concept of like, there's certain things that were brought up in ancient times, and maybe they didn't say the way we wanted to hear it, but maybe they knew something, and it just got lost in history. So that was kind of what stirred this whole idea of creating this story. And for those of you who read the first chapter, you're probably like, how does that make any sense? It's not relating to the story. Well, we're going to find a lot of things out later down the story. And by the way, this is the concept, or this is the idea. It's not what the story is necessarily about. It's just something that is in the back of my head that I've always kind of like thought it was cool, and that's kind of what inspired the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And yeah, this was a concept that I kind of read from, I think the guy's name is Alan Moore, the one who wrote Swamp Thing. He brought this. He mentioned that this is like whenever you're writing something, it's good to have an idea that constantly inspires you as you're writing a story. It's almost like that light at the end of the tunnel, so you know which direction to go. But anyways, that's kind of like my inspiration in a nutshell.
No, I like it. I just want to get people out there. What comics called The Elemental Balance. Is this the back to a little bit of the question? Is this the first comic you've created?
Yes, it's the first comic officially that I'm putting with art and everything. It's not necessarily the first story that I've written. The stories I've written weren't professional, but so I originally was going to go into creative writing and go into that form and play into, and this is, I don't know if you guys are going to ask me this question, tell me a little bit about yourself, but I'm kind of jumping into that. But I was originally going to go into creative writing, but I chose not to because, I just try to take the safe way and do business. But this is one of those things that just kept pulling me and saying that you just have to do it. And so I've actually quit my job to pursue this full time, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is, and I'm making these stories into reality now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think me and you've talked a little on the side. I love writing myself. It's I want to one day I want to do a comic, but I've been writing novels and stuff. It's not easy. It's something where you'll have a million concepts come into your mind and trying to figure out which ones you want to go with. It's something that's you're always fighting yourself with, and being able to put those words onto paper and actually put images beside them for a comic book is huge, and you're making it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird. Like, I feel like it's almost like a burden, I have to do it. It's one of those things that it's just like, almost like it's a calling, that I had to do this. And so every time I issue or publish one comic, it's almost like this relief that I get that, oh yes, I got this done. Now I can focus on the next thing.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm looking through your comic as we speak, and I'm just mind blown, how it all fits together so far. And I'm not going to spoil it, of course, but I'm just staring at it because I love every aspect. I love the story that you created. I love the background of the story that you created. And I'm falling in love with the artwork. And I want to ask you, as a writer, how do you find an artist to fulfill your vision, to make it come to life like this?
This is an interesting question. It's almost a feeling. When I started searching for artists, first of all, I didn't really even know how to search, so I did a lot of this Fivers. I think it's called Fiverr. Then there's called People Power. It's like these freelancing websites. So I started looking for artists through then, and just nothing felt right. And so then I came across Luke's artwork, and just something about the way he portrayed his characters just kind of gave me that feel that this is what I want. And by the way, most of the comics that I'm going to create, I'm gonna try to have artists that are kind of that have their own unique style, so that when you look at their art, you can identify that it distinguishes themselves from the rest. It's just something that's important to me, and I try to get artists that are good but not well known in the community, and try, that's my hope, to at least bring them up. If I can gain popularity with the comic, I can hopefully bring those guys up as well.
Yeah, so. That is amazing to find an artist like this that fits your vision. I've written in the past too, and I am kind of like an artist. I'm not good with cartoon art, but I've done still art and things like that, and just cartoony art has always been my passion, but I just can never get it onto the paper.
Yeah, it's and it looks, sometimes they look easy, but I don't know how they do it. I sketch myself. But I mainly sketch skulls, which I'm not going to make a whole comic book about skulls.
Somehow I think that would still sell, don't you?
Who knows? Yeah.
Well, is there anyone else you'd like to shout out to that worked on your comic to make sure everybody gets a name recognition?
Yeah, sure. Well, right now on chapter 4, I have a colorist that I brought along. His name is Matthias. He's recently been moving from Spain to Germany, so we kind of have a little bit of halt in our production with chapter 4. But yeah, he's came on board. I wanted to give some help to Luke because Luke's been working on the pencil, ink, and coloring for the first 3 chapters. So it kind of helps to have somebody else to help out with the coloring. So he's coming on board for chapter 4. We've already completed, as far as colors are concerned, we've completed up to 12 pages. And then as far as inking is concerned, we're up to 21 pages. So we're almost done. That's
awesome. And this is something I was kind of curious about too. As far as the comic, do you know where comic 6, 7, 8, 9 are going? Or do you know where 4 is going? And once 4 is complete, you'll figure out where 5 is going. Do you already have the story branched out in your head, or is each new issue just kind of like your own thing you're having fun with?
Well, so for me, it's important to finish the story before I even start working with the artwork. Because one of the things that I like in my stories is I like to put a little bit of clues in the beginning of the story that relate to the end. Because because the thing with the comic book, it's a medium where you flip pages, right? It's not like a movie where just once it's you watch it, it's gone, it's in the past. You can really easily flip pages back. So I try to use that medium so that I add a little bit of hints in the beginning of chapters. So let's say you finish chapter 4, you might want to read chapter 1 again because there's something that was brought up there, or in chapter 5. So the comic book is going to be roughly chapter 7. It's going to be roughly about 7 to 8 chapters, just depending on how long I stretch out some of the scenes, because essentially the story is written and is complete. It's just a matter of figuring out how many illustrations I want per page and how to space it out will determine if it goes to 7 or 8 comics. But yeah, the story's complete.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know
exactly. I was always curious if it just came to you.
No, I know exactly where it's going, and in fact, this story is so one of the things that I did is I made a 10-year plan. I have stories that are going to span up to 10 years. And they all kind of connect in a certain way. And then you don't have to read every comic book to understand what's going on in the comic book. But if you do, you get this really cool, because there'll be one comic that ties in all the characters, almost like the Avengers, So that's something I'm doing. It's crazy, but one of those things that I just have to do it.
Oh, absolutely. I've read your first issue, and that's because I went to your Kickstarter campaign, and that right you had going?
Yeah.
And I ordered the physical copies because I love reading a physical copy. That's my thing. So I've read the digital, the first one, so I'd have a good understanding of your comic, but I'm ready to get those 2 and 3 whenever that ends and actually get my hands on those and keep reading those, because that's when I get a physical comic, that's what I enjoy, is getting my hands on it, that feel of an actual comic, and ready to read the next chapters, because one is incredible.
Oh yeah. Oh, so you were on the Indiegogo then? So you got?
Was I on the Indiegogo? Okay.
Yeah, because if you were on the Kickstarter, you would have already got it. So I did them back to back, just because there's some people who were against Kickstarter. I don't know, some kind of political thing.
Who knows?
And I was like, yeah. So I was like, you know what? Why not? Let me bring it on Indiegogo. My objective is to have as many people, as many backers, and I, to me, I want to, spread the comic to as many users as I can. You guys are going to be really impressed with the prints. They came out really nice, so I can't wait for you to get them. Yeah,
I can't wait. That's what I'm excited to get those and bag and board and be able to preserve them, keep them, read them. But as far as the artwork, I was curious. When you're writing the story, you probably in your head you're thinking, so did the characters turn out the way you wanted to, or did he kind of have some freedom to interpret your writing as he saw fit, and you kind of collaborated that way, or did he go step by step what you had in mind for your characters? How does that relationship work out, as far as what you have in your mind and as far as what he's willing to draw?
It's interesting because it's almost a hybrid of a few things. For me, it's more of certain situations and certain scenery are more important, and then I have a basic character description. And I actually like to give my artist just the script and see how he interprets it. Because, keep in mind that, when I'm writing something, I visualize and I can think that it means something, but I don't exactly know how the reader perceives it. So it's nice to see when he translates it, I see what went right and I can see what went wrong, and I can make those adjustments. So I usually kind of give him just the text, like a blank slate, and then afterwards, I give him more description. And one of the challenging things from that is, let's say I want to say a character is shocked, right? He's shocked.
Right.
It's interesting that from the English language, or any language really, emotions are not really captured that well. It's hard to capture emotions, because if you think about shocked, it could be shocked in surprise, or shocked I can't believe someone said that. It could mean different things. So capturing that expression is kind of difficult. So I've been utilizing Google Images and stuff like that to find actors who make a similar emotion, and so I send them that because it's really hard to describe emotion. That's been the most challenging thing for me. I can visualize that, like what it looks like. I don't know how to say it.
I didn't think about that concept of it. Yeah, that puts a whole new loophole through it, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I wanted to ask you, from start to finish, right, on the writing aspect of it, how many years or how long did it take you to develop this series?
Well, the actual comic, the story, I developed in a month to write the whole story. Funny story about this is I initially, DC had this workshop, like a writer's workshop. So I wanted to submit it to them. And so I did. I wrote the story. I really loved this story. And I was like, I was kind of seeing rainbows and stars. And, I submitted it. They sent a response back saying, thank you for your submission, but we didn't accept it. And I just was convinced that they didn't even read it because I got such a template type response. But yeah, it took me a month to write it. But to actually produce it, so at that point I was like, all right, I want to make this into a comic book story because I really believe in it. And that took me longer to make because I was actually working. And so it took about a year to make the first comic because I'm making like a page here and there. And then about 6 months ago, I quit my job. And since then I was able to produce 2 comics. So I'm getting a lot quicker. And the reason why I even took 6 months to make those is because I had to do a lot of other stuff for the comic book, like just the organization, like creating the LLC and the logo and all this other stuff. That's what really took the time, not necessarily the comic book. So hopefully going forward with some of my other stories, I can create them relatively within a month or 2 months, like with full dedicated time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And with with this series, are you planning on, keeping it going like continuous, or do you have a set number of books for this particular series in mind?
Well, we're going to have a conclusion by chapter 7 or 8. So there'll be a definite conclusion. But then it kind of ends with a little bit of a room for future growth. I want to leave that open. I want there to be a satisfying conclusion. So when you close it, you know that, okay, a situation was resolved. You feel, gratified that, this story came to some ending. And then it'll be one of those things like, to continue it to be like, hey guys, this came up, that type of thing.
Right. So it has an option for continuation if you decide to go down that route.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I'm going to add a few things in there that will want you for it to continue, but at the same time for it not to be annoying. You know how when you leave something off with a cliffhanger, you want to watch the next episode? I don't want it to be a very strong cliffhanger to where you get annoyed that I have to wait so long. It's going to be a subtle thing.
Right. Just enough to keep you hooked, but not enough to piss you off. Is that a good balance?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to be careful about that because, whenever I'm writing these, I really write it as a person who watches entertainment and the things that annoy me and the things that I get frustrated about. I try to avoid those things,
Yeah, I've learned that like cliffhangers are great when you're watching a show on Netflix, but when you're watching it in real life, it pisses you off.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice that I think is fantastic that you did. I've read a lot of comics throughout my years, a big collector, and in a lot of my past comics that I've read or that I have, there's not a lot of like speech dialogue. Like there might be 1 or 2 speech bubbles in a panel, but I notice in your comic that you have a fantastic ability and a way to put these speech bubbles in to create an actual story, and I think that is amazing because that's something that I don't see in a lot of comics. Is that something that you did intentionally?
I appreciate you brought that up. This was one of those challenging things for me because people I feel like are kind of 50-50 on that. Some people really appreciate that, and others felt like there needs to be more art. Like there should be one speech bubble per art. And you know, they consider like comics need to be more of a visual thing, and to me it's both. You know, if there's a story, there needs to be a story, and there needs to be context. Like there's actually a lot of things I had to take out. There's a lot of information that I couldn't put in there, just because then I didn't want to overbear it with information as either. And I just put it to the side. Maybe later down the road, if you know, when I make another series, I can probably bring that other information in, which is pretty, you know, it's cool stuff, but it just didn't make it in the final cut. But yeah, I like speech dialogue. Like I want it to be impactful. I don't want just the art to be impactful, but the speech needs to be impactful as well. And actually, my favorite dialogues, like, so I like the dialogues on chapter 1 on the first 2 pages. You know, when we introduced kind of like the Earth and you know all that. Initially, that one was supposed to be where I was going to actually show how Earth was created with the bombarding of the rocks, and you know, because I try to, you know, if you read that, I tried to use real facts and mix it into my narrative, because I talk about, you know, rocks bombarding Earth or creating Earth, and with ice to cool it down, so I'm representing water. Then gases emerge, so I'm representing, you know, wind. And then earlier I had mentioned it was molten lava. So I kind of introduced all 4 elements in there, which is, you know, I kind of made that narrative. But I just thought it was something cool to do it like that.
Yeah, I love the way you did it, because you're getting story while reading the background, and yeah, your first 2 pages I love. Those are, you know, not to say the rest are bad, but those are probably my first 2 favorite, because you're getting 2 stories at once while getting an art scene that you don't really know what's going on, but you know enough where you're like, oh, I'm curious how this is going to turn out.
Exactly. I was trying to make it symbolic, like it's a different story that I'm telling, but in different scenes. But I was trying to make it to where, you know, when it says bombarded, there's like the ship is kind of like, you know, getting bombarded by the water, kind of make it a little bit symbolic. But yeah, I just wanted to accomplish like 2 stories in, you know, in few scenes. And the reason why I brought that up was because actually my favorite dialogues are in chapter 4. I can't wait for people to read that, because after those 2 pages, things kind of go into your I don't know what the right word is, but more of the subtle storytelling. Right. And then when the twists start happening and when certain things start revealing, you know, that's when the dialogues come in. Those are my favorite dialogues. Very thoughtful. They're thought-provoking, basically. Like they'll start making you question things, I hope, in a positive way. But you know, I'm curious to see how people are going to read it and how they're going to react to it.
I agree.
I'm going to be honest. I'm already hooked on your comic. I love it. It hits every point for me. There's nothing that's missed in this opportunity that you created. It's fantastic, man.
Thank you.
That's why me and Clown started this podcast, is because he likes a different style of comic than I like, and vice versa. So we both, usually if there's a comic that he likes, I don't, and vice versa. That's sort of something me and him usually have in common. But your comic sort of fits both of us. Like I love story more than anything. Like I have a tendency to read comics just the words, and then I'll go back later and fit the words with the pictures. I always had a tendency I want to know the story first, and then I'll figure out what I'm doing with this. And with like you said, the way you do your speech bubbles, I can keep up with what the characters are doing and everything along the lines of that. And he likes the cartoony art, but I like the more realistic stuff, and yours fits both of that. Like it's got the bright colors, the smooth lines, but it's also got where it's not so far-fetched that this could be a real-life image. Like I think it fits both of our little niche cliches here that we both love. And that's why we both are kind of excited to talk to you about it, because we both were hooked right away.
Appreciate that, yeah. And you know, that's what I really want. Like, you know, I want to try to, you know, when I wrote this, I write it as a story initially, as a novel. So there's plenty of text that come into it, and like I really expand on it as a novel. And then when I start making it into a comic, then I have to kind of dull down, and I have to put panel 1 speech dialogue this, you know, then I reformat it towards a comic formatting. So, you know, maybe in the process it does achieve that, where, you know, both of you guys can enjoy it.
Absolutely. So I know when you're, one second, clowns. I know when I'm writing, and I'm curious about you, I know when you are writing down, do you have a character that you sort of see in yourself? Like you see yourself as this character when you were writing? Did you have someone coming up that when you're writing, you kind of fit your personality, kind of fit who you are? Or did you try to stay away from that and try to make everybody just non-existent compared to who you are?
You know, not cautiously was I writing anyone that represents like me. Subconsciously, maybe, because every writer has some sort of bias, based on the kind of the morals and values that they've been brought up with. It reflects into their writing, but not cautiously. Because what I tried to do is I created these character profiles, and and I kind of wrote some of that information on the Indiegogo. Like you can see, Chloe and her description of who she is, and Baraka, who he is. And so every time I would write their dialogues, I tried to imagine a person I know who would react, whose personality is similar to this character, and so how would they react in a certain situation. That's what I tried to do, just so that if you read just the text and you didn't have any speech bubbles, you can kind of tell, okay, Baraka's talking or Chloe's talking just from the way that they're talking. Because so Chloe is, her character is someone who's very inquisitive. She's very eager to find answers, whereas Baraka is kind of very hey, let's just dodge this, let's dodge that, let's just hide this. He's very cautious. So throughout it, when you read it, I constantly imagine that person, of that kind of, and then you'll see him develop any person would. He'll probably be more open to things and whatnot. But I try to do that, just because if, I don't want every character to be like me,
Right. Clown, you had a question?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, just because from my perspective, this looks like you've been a professional writer for such a long time in the industry. How long have you been into comics, or were you into comics before this? Anything that you used to, cling to as far as comic-wise?
I was into comics a lot when I was younger. I was actually into Marvel comics, and then when I grew older, I got more into DC comics. But for me, I'm just I'm inspired by different forms of media. I myself have. I've made movies. I mean, none of it is good, by the way. I'm not claiming any of it is good, but I've made movies, I've made music, I've done some rapping, I've done sculpture, I've done sketching, painting. I just love forms of art. And so because comic books, are art, I've been drawn to it. And so what I do is I try to do a mixture of filmmaking and script development, for movie production with comics, and they're two different subjects entirely, but I try to merge the two. So if you're reading, you can kind of, I've heard some people say that they, when they read the first comic, they could actually almost imagine it as a Netflix episode or a Netflix show, and that's kind of just my style of writing. And I'm very observant. So I mean, I haven't been writing professionally for a long time, but I'm very it bugs me, because when I go to a movie theater, I'm not just watching, a movie. I'm watching, okay, that's act 1. Okay, that's act 2. All right, that's act 3. Kind of ruin movies for myself. But I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It does, definitely. One thing I wanted to ask you is, do you plan on making this internet, kind of digital with printed orders ordered online, or do you plan on going into comic shops and getting this out there?
So my end goal is to get it to comic shops. I really want to just focus on writing the stories, and because promoting and kind of getting the word out. I mean, I enjoy it. Don't get me wrong, but it takes up a lot of time, and I have a lot of stories on my, on my whiteboard that I want to start producing. So hopefully, and this is me being probably a little naive, but I'm hoping to get these in comic book stores and kind of let that become a momentum, and then I can focus on just writing stories and content. So my I had originally put it on Comixology, and I had bad experience on that. Like I think at the end of it, I got like $1 or something after, and it made several sales, but Comixology doesn't tell you how many they sell, and then there's other, like, I think Comic Central is better for indie comics, but I just haven't gone there yet because when I got the prints, I was like, man, I really want people to get prints. So that's where I'm focusing. Even if you look at my pricing table, I'm more pushing towards people buying prints than I am for digitals. Like digitals are cool and that's nice, and I want to offer them for people like international people who can't afford to, because that international shipping cost is a killer. I want to offer for them, but anyone in the U.S., my goal is to get prints to them.
Yeah, I love prints. I think me and Clowns are both there. We both have a large collection of comics. We love having the print copies. That's what makes our day. I think we understand you there.
Awesome. It's just this weird connection with man and script,
Yep. Yeah, I'm 30 years old, but there's nothing like the smell of opening up a new comic book or finding like a really old comic book and that smell and the texture of it on your hand. Those are just things you just never forget.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Do you have any writers that you looked up to throughout the years? Anybody specific?
Not anyone specific. For me, I like different styles. I don't stick to one style. Like even if you were to hear my music playlist, like it's so random. I got like some country songs, some rap songs, some hip hop, rock. Some.
Sounds like mine.
I have French music. I don't understand French. I just have it. I have like Moroccan music, Turkish. To me, it's just the feel. Like everything is about how it feels. So for me, like I don't necessarily have one writer that I like get inspired by, but I do like listening to different writers. Like when I talked about, I'm reading Alan Moore's, his description of how he writes stories. So I really enjoy that. And funny thing is, I also read. There's a book that I read that's called Negotiations. Something called Negotiation. It's a business book. And I read that to get myself inspired to write comic books, which sounds strange, but there's a lot of cool things that are mentioned there that helps in making characters.
Absolutely.
Because actually in the Negotiating book, it's talking about human psychology, and which is very helpful when you're making characters and you're writing stories.
No, I get that. I understand that completely. Going back to your influences, what was your favorite comic book hero to read growing up? You said you grew up reading Marvel and then DC. Did you have one character you went to mostly, or were you struck by something else like artwork or writing and you didn't really care about the character?
For me, it was, I think as a kid, I was probably not that, for me, it was always Spider-Man as a kid. And actually it was kind of weird. It stemmed off this one comic I read. I don't remember what the comic story, what the name of the title was, but I just remember it was a Spider-Man story, but from a perspective of a robber. And it was like this robber is like, robbing, like, he's with his gang or whatever, and he sees Spider-Man swinging by and is showing his family and whatnot. And it just kind of all tied in towards the end of like what Spider-Man meant to him. And I thought that was so cool, like it's a comic book about Spider-Man, but from a different person's perspective. And so that got me really into Spider-Man. And then as I started growing up, and those, I don't know if it's true or not, but I felt like those complexities in Marvel started to die down, or at least it wasn't there for me. And then DC reinvented their characters to where now it's not just about good guy versus bad guy, but good guy versus himself, like his own internal conflicts. And right. I was just really drawn to that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love those internal conflicts in a comic. Just taking out the bad guys, kind of like, okay, yeah, well, I can get a million comics to do that, but you want that story that just hooks you from the get-go, that makes you think. The stories that make you think are the ones you remember.
Exactly. Yeah. It's when they have a different twist to things and just a different perspective on things. I just love those kind of comics.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are just, like I said, like you said, the ones that just make you stop, put the comic book down, and just focus for a minute. Like, wait, what just happened? Is that what actually? Yeah, I get you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Zane. I'm still mesmerized by your comic. I'm still like going through it over and over and over again as we're talking, and it just blows my mind how creative this is. Because I've seen comics with good art, and it's like there's no speech. Like it's just like them smashing a wall, and the artwork's fantastic. And then you have comics with some speech, but the artwork doesn't like tug at you, and yours does both. I mean, oh my god, it's awesome, man. It's really
Thanks.
great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's it. It means a lot. Especially when you work really hard on it, and you just don't know how people are going to see it, and so just to hear that, it's really rewarding. It makes you kind of encouraged. And hopefully, for me, I'm growing as a writer. This is my first actual comic that I'm publishing, and I'm just gonna. For me, I hope I get better. This new comic that I'm writing called The Lost King. I mean, I'm excited about it. I'm a fanboy of it, of my own story, which is so weird. But I mean, I'm super excited. Can't wait till I get that one out. But I just hope that it gets better. And then when people start reading where the story's going, I'm really curious to see what kind of reaction people are going to get. I hope people are on board and enjoy what I'm trying to do. The way I see it is that if I'm going to if I'm going to write a story that just everybody's written and it feels familiar, why am I doing it? That's why to me, I have to write a story that's a little bit risky. And it's nothing like, controversial or anything like that. It's nothing that's like gonna hopefully doesn't offend anyone. It's nothing like that. It's just, I feel like I'm taking some risks in what I'm writing.
It does. And when I look at your comic, I'm thinking to myself, if I didn't get the opportunity to interview you, I would think that you're like an 18-year writing veteran and your artist is like a 20-year comic book veteran, because that's how professional it is. And I know it's kind of like a self-love indie published comic, but it looks really professional. And I just, I got to give you like a tap on the shoulder, a high five, because this is great.
Thanks, man. I sent this to a critic that was recommended by Diamond Comics, and this critic's responded back saying that, he's read some of the Scott Snyder's comics, and he's like he was telling about me that he sees that kind of potential. Man, I had goosebumps.
Absolutely.
I was like, are you serious? I was like, that's amazing.
We love it. Well, tell everybody where they can get your comics at. We've been talking about it for so long. We'll put some images up. We'll put you out on Twitter. But where can they go if they want to back you or buy the comics or anything like that? What can they do? Is there still time to get these issues?
Yeah, so there's 5 days. So basically January 30th is when the Indiegogo campaign is over, so you can get it on Indiegogo. I'll have it on demand on Indiegogo just for some of those people who are going to kind of stroll in a little bit later to get those comics. I don't know how in demand works on Indiegogo, but I just from what I read, it keeps the campaign like it's officially closed, but you can continuously order it. But that's really the only way to order these. I'll have a Kickstarter campaign when Chapter 4 comes out, but that's gonna be a little while from now. But that for now it's Indiegogo, and hopefully we can start getting these in the comic book shops. So it'll be a matter of just going to the comic book shop and grabbing them.
Yeah, I know personally. I did the Let's Get Physical perk with so only 25 and you get all 3 in print, and that's a great price. So I went ahead and did that the other day, and I'm excited to get those 3 in and be able to read them all in physical form.
Awesome, yeah. And then I'm gonna give also like a few perks with that too. You'll get a bookmark and you'll get a wristband.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I got some other like merchandise and stuff. For me, like I might even add some extra things like. I just enjoy, because I fulfilled a Kickstarter campaign for people, and I just enjoy. It's like fun, like putting gifts together, So I actually enjoy putting these things together. But yeah, I have the prints with me. As soon as the Indiegogo campaign is over, I don't know how they work those transactions out, and that's complete. I'm shipping these out, so that you guys can get them as soon as possible.
And I just pulled it up, and I see you've passed the 100% mark for Indiegogo. So congratulations on that too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're fully funded. We're green light. So super excited.
Clowns, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, are you offering any tiers where like you sign the comics or anything like that?
Yeah, I do have a tier, and this was kind of recommended to me by someone. I did add that later on. It's more like an add-on tier. It's just called, I think it's called Get It Signed. So it's $5 to just add it to if you have any physical order that you've already ordered, you just add that onto it, and I'll sign. By default, I'm going to sign the title page, the chapter 1. If you get that, you want me to sign all 3, I can sign all 3. I'm open to it, but by default, I'm going to sign chapter 1.
I can definitely tell you have a passion and a love for this, and that definitely separates you, from other people in the industry. To talk to somebody that actually loves doing this, I mean, it just really hits home for me. Do you plan on going into any conventions in the future or anything like that?
Yeah, I tried to get into. There's one in Houston where I'm at. I tried to get into that, but they give priority to people who had booths in the prior years. So I'm in a waiting list for that one. And then I submitted one to the Dallas convention. So I'm going to try. They haven't told me anything yet, so I'm going to try to get there. So, but I do plan on going to several of these. So that's kind of my intent. And yeah, I love, back to that point, I absolutely love this because, for some people, I don't know if they're doing it for money or what they do it for. I mean, typically you're probably passionate about this, generally speaking, but I didn't do it for money. When people ask me, they feel like, because when I posted my video, it looked, very professional and whatnot. Because in my head, I was thinking I need to make it look really good, the video, and people are going to see the professionalism and they're going to like it. For some people, it kind of backfired. They thought I was trying to do a sales pitch. But to me,
can't please everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it's not a sales pitch for me because this is what I tell people, if they ask me that, if I'm trying to make money out of this or whatnot, I actually quit an oil and gas job. Like I was getting paid really well. And I quit that to do this because I love this. This is not, I hope for it to be a career. I don't even expect it to be what I was making at my oil and gas company, but just sustainable, and I'll be happy with that. Because this is my love. Like I love doing this, and I love talking to people about it. I can't even for me, it's going to be very hard for you guys to get me to shut up because I just enjoy this so much.
Well, that's what we had you on. I've been talking to you, off screen, me and you've been messaging back and forth, and you're very passionate about it, and that's what got us hooked to your comic right away. Is I've talked to people before, they're like, yeah, you should read it. Okay, but no, you're very passionate. You want to talk about it. You want to explain things. That's why we wanted to get you on, because you're our first interview, and we're really excited to get you on and talk about your comic and get the word out, and and show it to other people. We talk about comics 75% of our podcast, even though that's not what it is. It's just something me and him both love, and you're very passionate about it. That's one of the reasons we really wanted to get you on.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And there's another thing I want to say on top of that too, because I've been to a lot of conventions throughout my years growing up, and to hear a writer or even an artist say that they'll sign all the books, in that set, the initial set, for even just $5 is passion. Because I've gone to conventions where I'm bringing up a comic to a writer or an artist, and they just look miserable. They're like, oh, another signature? Oh, man. Or they'll charge $40 for a signature. But there's no passion there. But with you, there's, so much passion. And I hope you will always have that passion, because it really shows in everything that you do.
I'll tell you this. If I lose the passion for doing this, I'll quit doing it. Because for me, or if I'm forced into writing something that I don't want to write about, I'll quit. Because for me, this is the whole reason why I'm doing this, is because I'm doing it because I love doing it, and I've in fact, I've been working countless hours when producing these, to the point I had a mental breakdown. So I actually had to, now I actually take weekends off, but before I didn't even take weekends off. I was working from 6 a.m. till close to midnight every day.
Oof.
Yeah, long hours.
Yeah, Clowns, I don't know if you've looked at his Indiegogo campaign much. I know you were looking to order some. He actually has the necklace from the first issue is one of the tiers that you can get. There's a whole Big Bang tier that has digital, physical wristband necklace. That's only what, $45. I mean, that's a great deal.
Yeah, and if you think about it, right, the necklace on its own, I think, is $20, and the comics on its own are $25. So that's 45 right there. So it's just better to buy the Big Bang than to get them separately. And then when you get the Big Bang, you get all the other stuff too with posters and whatnot. But yeah, I didn't write the story to where there was a necklace was going to become merchandise, but then when I was kind of reading through, I was like, oh, that'd be really cool if I can make this real, like if I can make the necklace, just to kind of, get that feeling of, holding something that's in a comic. It's almost like, it's a better experience, I think. And so I went through a lot of suppliers to try to find the best one who could make it right. I made a bunch of prototypes. And then these guys were able to make it, something that looked close to what I was trying to achieve. Made it look professional. At the same time, you look at it, you can distinctly say that, oh, this is from the comic book.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and I think that's fantastic that you did that, because you're bringing your passion to real life, and I'm just blown away, man. Like, I can't tell you how blown away I am. Another thing I want to ask you is, I know that you're self-published and independent. Do you plan on trying to get in with the publisher, or do you want to continue independently?
Well, I hope to finish the stories that I have right now, in draft. But I do want to get looked at by some of the professionals, and to be honest, mainly by DC, because I've actually written preliminary story ideas for DC Comics. I have one for Jon Stewart, one for Superman, and one for Batman. Like, to give you a little snippet, for Superman, I'm challenging the question of, if Superman's an alien, why does he look like us? So the story's premised on that. So I'm trying like different things. So, and I don't know. You never know.
I hope you make it, because this is, like, I'm with Clowns. I love the comic. I'm ready to read the other two, or all of them in general, but I'm getting the other two sent to me, so I'm ready to read all three of them in print.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Hopefully, these stories, if they kind of hit well with people, maybe some of these majors start looking at, start having eyes on me. But one of the things that kind of concerns me right now is that some of these majors are getting a little bit too political in their form of writing comics, and it's a little bit of a turnoff for me. To be honest with you, just some of the values that writers have or had, they're not there. At least I feel that way. So hopefully by the time, if it ever gets to that, or that will definitely be a discussion point that I would have if I do get noticed by DC Comics, at least.
Yeah, I'm with you. Politics is starting to take over comics a lot, and I'm kind of with you. I just kind of taking a step back. Like, I just want to enjoy comics. I don't need politics in it. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, you've seen my Twitter. I love politics in general, but as far as my entertainment, I don't need politics in my entertainment. I just want a good story. I want good art. I want to be able to lay down on my bed or my couch and put a comic in my hand and just read a story and get lost for a few hours. I mean, I think that's what it's about.
Exactly. You don't want to be like feeling like you're watching the news all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You want something different. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, and I mean, I can see that in your writing too, because the way that you wrote it, there's like some positivity there. Like, it feels like that universe has hope. It's really cool to see that. It's not drawn out with like negativity and complaints about everything here and there. This is just a fun, positive ride for a comic book. I mean, it's great, and as a comic enthusiast, man, I'm gonna tell you this 10,000 times. I can't get over how awesome this is, especially for being independent, and this is like your first breakout for your own stuff. Like, I would have thought you've been a veteran in this for a long time.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a huge compliment.
So if you could write for any character out there, like say that DC, Marvel all came out and said, we want you, who do you want to write for? Do you have a superhero or a team that you would kill to write for if you were given the opportunity to write for anyone?
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely DC characters, like, for sure, Superman. I have a Batman storyline, and Jon Stewart. Those are the stories that I have.
Three. Yeah, you mentioned them. I didn't know if that was your all-time favorites. I didn't know if that was the one you absolutely wanted to.
Yeah, those were absolutely the ones. And then, for me, I actually want to rewrite the Justice League movies, and like I have an idea of how to recreate the Justice League. So, I mean, I planned like, and the thing for me is I don't trust that I will remember my ideas, so I always write them down. As soon as I come up with a cool idea, I write it down. That's why. So when you see these comics, there's like these concepts. They're not all, they didn't come like I started writing them and then this is the final product. Like there was a lot of ideas came from like if I was in the shower and I got an idea, I had to get out of the shower, write on my phone exactly what I thought, and then get back in the shower just because I don't trust that I would remember it. And I encourage like any new writers or anything like that to like don't trust you'll remember an idea, just always write it down.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I gotta agree with you there too. I've actually heard that tip from other writers in the past that do similar things, and I always say my best ideas come when I'm like half asleep and I wake up and I can't even write it down because I can't remember. But I had this awesome dream, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I keep a notebook in my patrol car for the same thing. I'm riding around on my patrol car, I'll pull over and write a note down.
Yeah, I actually, whenever I do have that, like in my dream, I actually wake up and write it down. Believe it or not, like I hate myself for doing it, but I was like, I'm not gonna remember in the morning. I need to write it down. So, yeah, it's just funny how kind of ideas work that way. And
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your. You can go ahead.
I actually lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
You should have wrote it down. See.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so I was going to give you guys a tip on what I do as well for writing stories as far as capturing emotion. One of the things, like, everybody goes through writer's block, right? So whenever I have this writer's block, I try to think of it I step back and say, okay, what is the scene that I'm trying to capture? Like, what is the mood of that scene? So if it's a serious mood or if it's like an epic scene or is it a romantic scene, I start playing that theme music. So if it's something that's epic, like it's an epic battle, like I'm actually literally listening to epic music as I'm writing those scenes just to get that creative juices flowing. And it's helped me a lot. So, because creativity is also mood and feelings, it's not a very structured thing. It's not like a, formula. It's something that you feel, you know what I mean? That's why I use different forms of things that make me feel a certain way. Or I go on Google and just start typing different words. Like if I'm making a battle scene, I'll just type in battle scene and just see what are the different images that I see, and try to see if I can retain or capture some of that into my stories.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I told you I'm like writing a book, and I've been on writer's block for a month on the same freaking chapter. So no, I get that. It happens, unfortunately, but I have to keep that in mind and give that a shot.
Yeah, definitely try it out. And so when I was in where I worked in the oil and gas, I did a lot of project management, and so we had different strategies on how to meet goals and milestones and whatnot. I actually reformatted some of that stuff to apply to comics. Like, for example, if we have a battle scene, we have this thing called fishbone diagram, or it's also called a root cause analysis. And basically what it is what the ending is, right? And now you create this line with other lines sticking out of it, so what looks like a fishbone. And then you type in, okay, you go backward, you kind of like reverse engineer yourself. Okay, this happened. What could have been in different situations that would have caused that? So when you write those down on the different lines, and then you go step back and say, what were the different situations that happened to the lines before? And then you keep on moving yourself backwards that way. And obviously not everything will go in your final cut, but it's just a way of formatting your ideas and throwing it on paper.
That's an awesome way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Did you gain back what you were thinking?
No, I lost it. I should have wrote it down. I know we just had that discussion.
I heard
positive right there.
I heard this comedian talking about like he was thinking of something and then he forgot it, and then someone was like, "Well, it must have not been important." And the guy was like, he's like, "Really?" Because he's like, "My earliest memory was me staring at a wall. How could that have been important?"
That's pretty good. I'll have to use that next time.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Okay, I think I remember now. So when you came up with this idea that you wanted to go into comics like this and do your own stuff, did you have a good support system with friends and family, or was it just kind of like you saying, "Hey, I got this idea," and everybody's like, "Oh man, that's crazy."
It was more so from family wise, like my dad still doesn't know that I quit. Because when I tried to bring it up to him, he was just like, shut the F up and pass me the salad, you know? Like he shut it down and then asked for salad. Like that's how important it was for him, you know? Like it was done. And then, but my biggest support has been my wife. Like if she wasn't supportive, if she wasn't on board, I wouldn't have never quit. I would never quit my job. I would have thought, I would have left it as, you know, I write these stories, but no one's going to want to read it, you know? And so she really pushed me. She's like, you know, you have to do it. I don't care what happens. Like if people don't like it, they won't like it, but you have to do it. So she's been my biggest support system. She took on a job to just help me, you know, continue doing this as a full time. And funny thing is, when I met my wife, I didn't really have a good pickup line, so I had written a story, so I told her this entire story. It was the longest pickup line ever, but she loved the story so much, and since then she was like, "This is what you need to do," and I always kind of resist, like, "No, that's not." You know, I'm a grown person. I need to get a corporate job. You know, that's what I need to do. But then at some point in life, you kind of realize it's not about money. You know, there's things that are more valuable than that.
Absolutely.
And that's how I can tell that you're a passionate person right there. Because people without passion just keep going along with, you know, the daily system, daily routine. And people with passion break out of that and they're like, I got to do my own thing. I have to do it. I got to do it. And I see that here. And tell your wife I said thank you, because this is what you created is just epic.
Thank you. I can't wait for you to read the rest. I mean, it's gonna be a roller coaster. You know, I would love for you to tell me your honest opinion once you read end of chapter 3. There's gonna be a twist. I'm really curious to hear what you think about it. And then chapter 4 is gonna kind of after chapter 4, everything is gonna be like on fire, high pace, high intensity. A lot of stuff are gonna get introduced that were mentioned before. So, you know, chapter 1 is calm. Chapter 2 picks up a little bit of pace. 3 starts picking up a little pace, and then on 4 is just on fire. Ironically, the chapter is also titled "Fired Up," but
I think, you know, the next time I go into my comic book store, I'm gonna like talk to the guys there, the manager, and be like, "Man, you gotta hear about this comic. You gotta see this comic. It's so great. You gotta order this comic. It needs to be on your shelves."
I would love that. And you know, the thing is, I'm as soon as I get on board with Diamond Publishing, because they're the distributors to all the comic book stores. As soon as that happens, I'm gonna actually kind of invest in 100 comics. Like I'll buy 100 comics of all 3 issues and just kind of give them to different comic book stores, just to have them on their shelves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Get the word out.
Yeah.
And that's what, you know, I don't know. That's what it comes to me and clowns being a little different. You know, you guys had your characters growing up, your people you loved. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love my Captain Americas and such, but when I walk into a comic book store, it's a cover. Like if I walk around the entire comic book store and I see if there's a cover that catches me, and your cover would catch me because, well, what is this? What's going on here? Like it's just not somebody standing looking at the screen. It's somebody doing something. It's something you haven't seen, and that's what I like about yours is your cover would catch me, and that's why I think you'll do pretty good in a comic book store. Like get this word out, and once you get them out there that, hey, they're at such and such store, people walk by, they get to see this cover, and it would catch your eye. Like Clown said, it kind of catches both forms of art that we both like.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I really hope so. And that's the goal. You know, I want it to be in comic book stores. People start ordering it, and then I can start focusing on just writing the stories. That's my goal essentially, is to just write the stories. I want to focus on writing the stories because there's a lot of cool things that are about to happen, and I am like holding every inch of my body not to say it because I really suck at secrets. But I rather you guys. But it's just so many cool things that are going to happen, and I want you guys to experience it.
Well, before we go for the day, is there anything you'd like to tell the audience who's going to listen to it? Anything about your comic? Anything different that you'd like to share before we go?
No, nothing really. But I definitely encourage you guys to take a look at our Indiegogo. If anybody wants to read the first chapter, we are offering it for free, the digital version, for you guys to check it out, see if you like it. And if you guys want to reach out to me about anything, I'm always happy to answer any questions.
Where can they find you? What's some social media or websites or emails they can find you on?
Sure. As long as you type in inZane Comics, you pretty much can find me on anything, really. So like my email is inZaneComics@gmail.com. Our website is www.inZaneComics.com. Twitter is inZane Comics, and our Instagram is inZane Comics. So you can find us on all those platforms.
Clowns, anything you'd like to add?
To everybody listening to this, once you see this comic and support Zane and everybody behind this comic, it's amazing. You look at the comic and you're thinking, okay, this guy's worked for Marvel, this guy's worked for Image. That's how professional this is. You don't even look at it like just an indie. You look at this like a professional work of art. And you can even see this being like a Netflix or CW series because, blown away, man. And I hope you guys leave comments as well once you check it out. But it's epic.
And he's offering the first one for free. You have no excuses here. You have that's all me and Clowns have looked at, and we're already hooked. Just that first comic for free. We hadn't got 2 or 3, 4 yet. Just take a look at the first one. It's printed. It's out there. You can get it for free. It'll get you hooked. Within the first couple panels, I was hooked.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, not a problem. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to interview with us. We hope to bring you some followers, some support, and I personally can't wait to get the rest of the comics in to read.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thank you guys for having me. This has been a great blast. Love talking to you guys. And I'd love to come back, especially when we come up with chapter 4 and you guys read all 3 chapters. I'd love to hear your input.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to have a follow-up show.